After my wife's betrayal, I fled back to my granny's old house from my childhood. A few days later, an unexpected visitor fought through the blizzard to find me and said, "Get your coat. You're coming with me." I heard the man's voice before I even shut the door. Then her laugh. Too high, too sharp. It didn't sound like how she used to laugh when it was just us and cheap wine and movie nights. The coats weren't mine. Two of them slung sloppy over the armchair, boots under the radiator. Our Bluetooth speaker was running her party playlist, the one she always blasted when she wanted to feel 20 again. I didn't need more than that. I stood in the kitchen looking at the two wine glasses on the counter, lipstick on one. His voice again, muffled, coming from the bedroom. She didn't even close the door. She walked out in a black tank top, barefoot, not even startled. She leaned against the doorframe like I was just another errand she forgot to handle. "You've been distant for months, Caleb," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Married to deadlines." I didn't say a word, just stared at her for half a second longer than I should have, then grabbed my keys and my laptop bag off the chair. "Seriously, that's your move?" she called after me. I didn't turn around. Didn't slam the door either. I walked out into the wind. Snow was already coming down hard, hitting sideways against the cars lining Maple Street. I walked 3 blocks without thinking, past the diner, past the shuttered florist, until I stopped under a busted street light and just stood there breathing. That's all I could do without screaming. I felt like a complete fool. My own place was still rented out. I'd signed the lease through mid-February to float my half of the mortgage on our shared condo. Tiffany said we needed options if things went south. Guess she was already planning her exit. I turned around and went to the only place I could, the office. Northlight Press was dead quiet that time of night. I swiped in and took the back hall to my edit bay, pulled the blackout curtains, dimmed the desk lamp, and opened my laptop like the world hadn't just kicked me in the ribs. I couldn't even get into my own apartment. I just sat there trying not to picture what she was doing in that bed. Hank Wells, our night security guy, knocked twice and handed me a mug of peppermint tea without saying a word. He's one of those old union men who know when to talk and when to shut up. I nodded. He nodded back. That's all we needed. By morning, she was there. Tiffany in my office, standing like she owned it, like she hadn't ripped the floor out from under me 12 hours earlier. "You didn't come home," she said, arms crossed like I was a teenager who missed curfew. Very unprofessional. I kept quiet and stared past her at the blank wall. Her tone shifted. "Quiet now, just for me. Without me, you're nobody here, Caleb." Right on cue, Joseph walked in. That fake slick smile of his, like everything's a photo op. He always hovered around Tiffany, always called himself a consultant, like that meant anything. "We're restructuring," he said, sliding into my space. "Consolidation of verticals, brand refresh, nothing personal." Tiffany stepped closer and said it plain. "Consider this your separation from duties. HR would be in touch." I kept my back straight. "I'll take my personal files and my final check." She smirked. "Hank's under instruction not to let you back in." By noon, my badge stopped working. I stood at the glass doors holding my laptop bag like it was a lifeline. Hank buzzed me out, his eyes low. He texted one word after. "Sorry." As I stepped into the wet snow, someone brushed past me in the lobby. Black wool coat, heels clicking like she knew exactly where she was going. Tina Brooks, the owner's daughter. She didn't recognize me, but I knew her face from every investor deck I'd ever been forced to read. She stopped just long enough for us to shake hands. Her grip was warm. Then that thing hit me. The static, the tight pull in my ribs, the warning. I saw it clear as a headline behind my eyes. A black SUV nose down in a drift. Steam rolling off the hood, smoke curling in the cabin. Mile marker 42. I let go of her hand. "Don't take your Range Rover north tomorrow," I told her. She tilted her head. "I've got a 10 o'clock in Albany." "Then don't take that car," I said. "Not north. Not tomorrow." She blinked once, real slow, then walked away. I told myself it was just nerves, just editorial gut. But the picture stuck in my chest like a lit match and it wouldn't go out. The lock didn't click. I tried twice hard and it was useless. Tiffany had changed it. I stood there on the stoop with snow hitting sideways. One hand on the knob, the other stuffed in my coat. And I just laughed once, short and mean. She'd done it fast. Same day fast. That was her. When she cut you loose, she didn't leave a fray. Nothing left but bone. I waited 15 minutes like a stray. My nose burned and my jeans were damp to the knee. Nothing. No lights came on. No apology. No second thoughts. I gave up. Got back in my Subaru and aimed north. Grandma's place sat 86 miles out past the state road and the river cut. Out where the highway ends and the land flattens like paper. She raised me out there. No parents, no safety net, just her. A small garden and a fireplace that ran hot until it didn't. She used to say, "This house will hold you when people won't." I kept both hands on the wheel and my eyes on the lines. The heater coughed, the engine wah-had on hills, but it kept moving. Wind battered the glass like fists. That whole drive, not once did I think about where my career went. I only thought about how quiet the house was going to be and whether the roof patch had held. An hour out, the county road started disappearing under drifts. I made it as far as the plow berm and had to park it. Beyond that, the tires spun, and I wasn't about to die, proving a point. I got out, wrapped my scarf high, and started walking. Each gust sliced like a blade. The snow stung through my gloves. I counted fence posts and focused on the ground. About halfway, I heard something I wasn't expecting. A weak voice, then a hollow thud. I looked down the ditch and saw Barbara Miller face down in the snow, bags scattered, one boot missing. Her coat was half open, groceries in the ditch, canned beans, paper towels, a bent loaf of bread. Her glasses were askew, lenses frosted. She'd known me since I was 12. Gave me peanut brittle on Christmas. I yelled her name, got nothing but a groan. I couldn't carry her, not without dropping her. My fingers were already numb. I scanned the road, then saw an old sled leaned against a fence like someone meant to fix it one day and forgot. It was half cracked and missing a rope. I dragged it over, tied her coat belt to the crossbar, and loaded her on with one bag tucked under each arm. Then I hauled. Step, brace, pull. Step, brace, pull. My hands screamed. Took 15 minutes to reach her place. Eddie opened the door in socks and a flannel shirt, his eyes wild. He helped me get her inside, offloaded the bags, and wrapped her in 2 quilts while muttering, "Stubborn woman." She came to enough to call me her little proofreader, which made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. I told Eddie I'd come back tomorrow with salt for the path. Then I kept going. By the time I hit Grandma's place, I was shaking so bad I couldn't get the key to slide. The lock stuck like always, but the old butter knife trick worked. That first breath inside smelled like cedar dust and stale coffee. The silence nearly broke me. The kitchen window had cracked again. I taped it fast with what was left in the drawer. The logs I'd split back in fall were low, maybe 8 left. I jammed 3 in the stove and lit them with pages from an old phone book. I didn't bother unpacking. I just sat on the floor, hands pressed against the iron, trying to feel something through the gloves. I must have slept about an hour. When I woke up, my hands didn't feel like mine. The skin was pale and waxy, and the knuckles looked wrong, tight, swollen, like balloon joints. I couldn't flex my fingers without pain. I stood dizzy, and that's when the knot came. Not the wind, not a tree limb, a real knock. I opened the door and blinked hard. It was her. Tina Brooks, black wool coat, cheeks pink, hair in a braid, snowflakes clinging to her sleeves. "Are you Caleb Nelson?" she asked like she already knew. I nodded once, then leaned against the doorframe to stay upright. "How on earth did you find me out here?" She exhaled through her nose, shifting her weight. "I called Hank, told him I'd seen you yesterday. He said if it's a storm, you'd come here, gave me the road name, said you were too stubborn to call anybody. Of course he did." Hank's loyalty didn't talk. It acted. She stepped closer, brushing a curl off her forehead. On the northbound, just past mile 42, my driver had to swerve around a van half buried in the drift. "Same spot you warned me about." I let that sink in. My ribs felt tight again. "I turned around," she added. "Moved Albany to later, switched into a sedan, and told my assistant I was checking on something that couldn't wait." Her voice was steady. Not warm, not cold, just sure. By mid-afternoon, I heard it for myself. The scanner app on my phone crackled through the static. Black Range Rover pulled from a snowbank at mile marker 42. Not hers. Same drift, same hour. She caught me watching my hands under the table lamp. They looked worse in the light. Red lines across the joints, stiff and purple near the thumbs. "Get your coat," she said, no hesitation. "I'm not leaving you to lose your fingers." I wanted to argue. Tell her I'd handled worse, that I didn't need help from the boss's daughter, but I didn't say a word. I grabbed my coat and let her guide me outside, down the porch steps, into the car with the heater already running. At the county hospital, she walked straight to the nurse's station and put her card on the counter like it was a shield. "This one needs triage," she said, nodding at me. "He's mine." And just like that, I wasn't drifting anymore. The intravenous drip clicked steady at my side. My hands were wrapped to the wrist, thick and white, like I'd stuck them in cake frosting. I could feel them pulsing, not with pain. Just that weird, numb pressure that told me I was one bad night away from worse. The nurse walked in, grinning like we shared a joke. "Your wife's a force," she said, checking my chart. "I'm not married," I mumbled. She snorted. "Then she's your boss." She left still laughing. Tina was in a plastic chair near the window with a legal pad and pen. No makeup, hair in a knot that had clearly been redone more than once. She looked like she hadn't blinked since I'd passed out. She glanced up. "Your last name?" she asked, tone even. "Nelson?" I nodded once, slow. She nodded back. "Hank confirmed. Said you were stubborn but straight." That tracked. She sat forward, elbows on her knees. "Does that thing in your chest, whatever it is, ever get it wrong?" I shifted on the pillow. "It's not magic. It's just gut instinct. Editor's instinct, maybe. You warned me about the road." "That wasn't gut. I don't call it visions," I said flat. "I don't need to believe in something to use it." "Call it what you want," she said. "I'm listening." She flipped a page on the pad, scanned a note, and let out a breath. "I think Tiffany and Joseph are bleeding Northlight. My mother's been hearing chatter through the foundation. Expenses don't match projects. Things feel off." I didn't move. Just watched her jaw tighten. "I want to build something honest," she said. "I'm done playing inside the machine. I need someone who smells rot before it spreads." I said nothing. "I'll cover your treatment. Give you a desk. Temporary setup for now, war room style. We'll run lean, separate slate, different books." I blinked. "I don't want to rescue." "I'm not rescuing you," she said, voice like steel. "I'm hiring you." The room went quiet. Only the IV drip filled the silence. "My dad wants me to stay on script," she added after a beat. "Keep the deals he signed. Marry the guy he picked looked polished for the shareholders. How's that working out?" She smiled without warmth. "He still thinks Gordon's an asset." I cocked my head. "Why me?" She didn't even blink. "You warned me when you didn't have to. And Hank says you've been carrying an imprint lead's weight for 2 years without a title bump. That's not a guy looking to coast. That's a guy who wants things right." Right then, the doctor came in. Young, fast-talking, clipboard in hand. "Frostnip and some infection risk," he said, flipping pages. "You got lucky. We caught it early. 2 weeks in wraps, some PT after. You'll be near normal by week 6 if you don't do anything dumb. No hero moves." I looked at my hands. "Guess I'll learn to type with oven mitts." He chuckled, scribbled something, and walked out. Tina stood and grabbed a paper cup off the windowsill. "I brought you coffee." I sipped it. It was awful. She opened her bag and pulled out a beat-up paperback. "This manuscript yours?" she asked, flipping to the margin notes. "Final edits before I got canned?" I said. "Author's green but has teeth." She pointed at a sentence I'd circled. "Why this one?" "It's overwritten. Trying too hard." She nodded. "You see straight." I didn't answer. But for the first time in days, my breath came without drag. It wasn't the meds. It was her sitting there asking real questions, reading the pages like they mattered, like I still mattered. 4 days in, she came back with a canvas satchel and dropped it on the tray table beside my water cup. "What's this?" I asked, not touching it. "Board packets, vendor files, some consulting invoices, all too neat, too round, and too vague." "You want me to sniff?" She met my eyes. "Tell me if I'm wrong." I tilted my head. "You're not." She pulled the chair closer. "I've been hunting dead air since last spring. People using old contracts to hide new moves. Joseph keeps recommending vendors he trusts, but every time he says that, I hear a number behind it. You said your mom heard rumors about what? Middleman deals, kickbacks, soft billed hours, basically old school skimming dressed up like optimization. And you think Tiffany's in it with him? I think she runs it and Joseph's her inside arm." That lined up with what I'd suspected for months, but never had proof of. Every time I'd flagged a contract, Tiffany buried it in meetings or rewrote the scope to look clean. Tina pushed the satchel closer. "I need a second set of eyes. Someone who's been inside but isn't scared of the names." I asked the question I hadn't wanted to out loud. "What about Gordon?" She leaned back like the question left a bad taste. "He thinks I'm setting up a passion project. Said I should focus on foundation optics and leave ops to real players." That is language. Every word. I shifted, wincing. "You don't want a project. You want a reckoning." She didn't deny it. "I'm in," I said. But only if I see the whole map. No half routes. You'll get it. Everything I have. I reached out with both bandaged hands and nudged the satchel closer. My knuckles throbbed, but I needed to touch it. Needed to feel like I still had skin in the game. This one, I said, flipping through the stack and pulling a line item invoice marked consulting third quarter rollover. Smells like bleach. She grinned, eyes tired but sharp. I knew it. She gave me the guest room on the second floor. Window facing a half-bare maple. Room was plain. Fresh paint, clean sheets, no art, just a folding chair and a sturdy desk. Like she knew I'd use both. This is not charity, she said, standing in the doorway. Clock starts at 9 sharp. I'm up before that anyway, I told her. I know, she said, and shut the door. The next morning, I heard him before I saw him. His laugh echoed off the walls. Gordon Barnes, perfect posture, perfect teeth, loafers even inside. His kind of confidence wasn't built, it was performed. When Tina introduced us, he didn't shake my hand. Just looked me up and down like I was a contractor who tracked dirt. So, this is the editor, he said. The one with the psychic weather reports. Tina didn't flinch. I didn't either. He leaned in a little. What do you do now? Goes to write horoscopes? Read tea leaves between chapters? I looked at him once, then went back to my coffee. At dinner, he tried again. Question after question how long I'd been out of work. Whether I liked living off charity, if Tina was starting a side imprint or a rescue shelter. Tina set her fork down and spoke without looking at him. He's my pilot. He's here because I asked. Gordon smiled wide, showed all his teeth, and shut up. After that, things settled into a rhythm. Mornings. I reviewed vendor packets with a spatula stuck under my arm because my hands still hated gripping anything tighter than a coffee cup. I made an omelet on the third try, burned the first, over-salted the second. Tina ate the burnt one and said it tasted like pride. I almost believed her. The townhouse wasn't rich. Not like you'd expect from someone in her position. No marble, no glass walls or expensive sculptures. Just dry erase charts taped to the fridge. Timelines and names on index cards stuck to a corkboard in the hall. One shared printer. No assistants. She ran meetings at the kitchen table. 40 minutes max. No tangents, no buzzwords. It felt like breathing real air after years of choking on slogans. One afternoon, Joseph just showed up. Claimed he was dropping by to say hi, but the way he scanned the kitchen said otherwise. Tina kept it polite. I kept my eyes on the folder I was tagging. Then he pulled a slick white card from his jacket and slid it toward her. New auto service partner, he said. Same group we're trying to use across fleet. You should get ahead of it. Standardize. I picked up the card, scanned it fast. Same logo from the vendor list I'd flagged 2 days earlier. One of the shell companies. He'd used an old return label address from before we locked the files. That told me everything. He looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be in the room. I slid the card back across the table. She's not interested. Joseph chuckled. Didn't realize you spoke for her now. She's got ears. She can tell you herself. Tina stood up then. Thanks, Joseph. I've got it from here. He left without pushing. That night, I stopped by Eddie's place after therapy. Left a box of rock salt on his porch with a sticky note. For the ditch path. Sorry again for the sled. No signature, just that. Back at the townhouse, the air smelled like rosemary and something roasting. Tina's mother, Evelyn, was on speakerphone. Her voice was low, slow, bookstore soft, the kind that settles your shoulders without trying. She asked Tina what I'd eaten. Said it like a habit, like she already counted me in. I didn't know what to say to that, so I kept peeling carrots while Tina lied and said I'd made stew. At night, I started sleeping again. Not deep, but real. No more dreams of fog and wire. I dreamed in lines again, scenes that made sense. I told myself the heat I felt in my chest around Tina was relief. Just relief. Gordon started coming home later, always with some donor story, some crisis that needed him urgently. One night he looked pale and talked about a minor health scare his doctor was monitoring. He said the words fast like he'd practiced them. Something in my enzymes, he told us over Rosado. They're watching for early markers. Could be nothing. Could be not nothing. Tina looked concerned but didn't rush to ask questions. The next day he mentioned a therapy. Crazy expensive. He said like $14,800 a round. They're looking at 10 rounds. A week later, it was a different number. Closer to 12 grand, he said this time. Insurance might only cover part, but I'll figure it out. By the third version of the story, he'd landed on $9,600 a week, maybe for 12 weeks, no test names, no facility, just vague clinical terms and shifting math. Tina asked calmly. Do you have paperwork? He nodded. Yeah, I'll send it over. It's in my inbox somewhere. He didn't. The morning after Gordon dodged Tina's request for paperwork, we sat across from each other in a yellow-lit cafe on 3rd. The place smelled like burnt espresso and warm bread, the kind of place where every table wobbled a little. Tina spread papers across the laminate surface like she was mapping a battle. This is the beacon slate, she said, tapping her pen against a hand-drawn chart. Separate from the old books. Clean lines, long-form projects, transparent ad rates, no kickbacks, no middleman add-ons. Every vendor line gets a real scope and a real contract with a real phone number behind it. I looked over the layout. It was ambitious, but it wasn't fantasy. You'll get pushback, I said. People like fog. Fog hides hands. I don't care if they like fog, she said. I care if they can stand in daylight. It felt good to hear it. Really good. I recruited 3 writers I trusted. Nora, Felix, and Darius, plus she, the sharpest copy chief I'd worked with in my old imprint. I told them this was payroll straight. No games, no soft money, no waiting for signatures that never came. They all showed up ready, notebooks out, coats dripping on the carpet of the townhouse. They looked hungry in the best way, hungry for work that didn't involve watching their backs. We spent the rest of that week building the skeleton of the first slate, long-form pieces, narrative essays, a feature series about rural hospitals, a data-driven business report on small-town development. Hina didn't hover. She sat at the far end of the table and asked clean, simple questions. What's the story? What's the angle? What's the timeline? She listened more than she talked, which is rare for anyone raised in a tower of glass. Around midweek, Evelyn dropped by the townhouse with a paper box of scones. She knocked once, then let herself in, calling out, I brought fuel. Before we even looked up. She set the box on the table and looked straight at me. Her eyes were warm and curious, like she was cataloging a new book for a shelf she already loved. You have quiet eyes, she said. That helps you see. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just nodded. Evelyn had that bookstore calm about her. Soft sweaters, gentle voice, but sharp enough underneath that she saw everything without making you feel naked. While the writers brainstormed at the other end of the table, she told me stories about her old book club in a strip mall 20 years back. They'd meet once a week with folding chairs, drink cheap coffee, and keep running tabs for folks who were between paychecks. People paid when they could, she said. If they couldn't, they brought homemade bread or shoveled snow. It balanced out. She said it like the world had once been that simple. Back before deals got slippery and families turned into headlines, I listened harder than I meant to. I kept picturing that life. Straight lines, warm bread, neighbors who didn't cut you loose over optics. At lunch, Tina's phone buzzed with her father's name. She set it on speaker because she hates whispering. Christina, he said, voice deep, sharp, too smooth. I'm hearing chatter about you building an off-book slate. It's not off books. She said it's transparent. That's the point. You are a Brooks. He said there are familial expectations. Stakeholder harmony to consider. Optics with Gordon in the frame. You know how this works. She leaned back in her chair, jaw set. Dad, I resigned from your board in 60 days. Put it in writing. You don't own my decisions. A full beat of silence. Then he hung up. No goodbye, no warning, just gone. Hina stared at the phone a moment, then slid it across the table to me. You ever watch a tether snap and feel relieved? All the time, I said. My grandma used to look off at nothing and say things before they happened. I write it off as gut now, but she called it a gift. Hina tilted her head. Call it whatever helps you sleep. The rest of the afternoon, we combed through vendor lists line by line. I flagged suspicious items. Hina cross-checked board approvals. At one point, she asked if I'd mind reaching out to someone in finance who wouldn't sell us out or tip anything to Joseph. I knew exactly who to call. Leia Chen, VP of Finance, one of the only people in that building who treated numbers like truth instead of a suggestion. She came to the townhouse after work wearing a gray coat and carrying a folder thick with printouts. She didn't waste time on small talk. Show me the names, she said. I slid them across the table. She circled the same lines I had almost instantly. Round numbers, vague scopes, recycled language, identical signatures. These vendors are fake, she said. Or at least repurposed. Somebody's running money through them. Somebody meaning who? Hina asked. Leia gave a tight smile. You want me to say it out loud? Please, Tina said. It smells like Joseph's work, she replied. And whoever's giving him cover. She didn't have to say Tiffany's name. It sat in the middle of the table like a stain. While Tina and Leia discussed next steps, my phone buzzed. Gordon had sent her a picture, a clinic lobby, beige tiles, a wristband on his hand, some generic pamphlet about recovery on the chair next to him. She held the phone up toward me like she wanted a second opinion. I studied the background. The glass pattern on the divider was familiar. That's the spa clinic on 46th, I said, keeping my voice low. They sell sleep pods and vitamin drips, not medical treatment. She stiffened. Just a small shift, but I saw it, felt it in the air. I appreciate you looking, she said quietly. I didn't say more. Not my place. My job was to keep the slate clean, not untangle her relationship with a man who couldn't keep his story straight. Later, after the writers left, and the townhouse dimmed to that warm evening glow, Evelyn pulled me aside in the kitchen while Tina took a call. She poured me tea like she'd done it 100 times. Don't let the big building chew your pieces, she said, stirring her own cup. It tried to chew mine and Tina's. Keep who you are. I'm trying, I said. Some days it feels like holding sand. She smiled. Sand can build foundations if you pack it with purpose. I didn't know how to respond. I just nodded and sipped the tea. It tasted like chamomile and something steadier. When Tina came back into the room, phone still lit in her hand. She looked between us like she knew exactly what had been said, but wouldn't ask. She just sat down, opened her laptop, and motioned toward the pile of notes on the table. Back to it, she said. And we did. We worked until the street lights flickered on outside the window, filling that little townhouse with the kind of focus you can't fake. Clean, sharp, forward. By week 6, I could close both hands again. Still stiff in the mornings, but I was back to typing with real keys and gripping coffee mugs without dropping them. The gauze was off. The work was sharp. The beacon slate had shape now. Real writers on real deadlines, real vendors we could actually verify. That morning, Tina handed me a folder and told me to meet a documentary director 2 towns over. Take the pool forward, she said. It's full on gas. I nodded, zipped my coat, but something in my chest pulled tight. That static again, ribs humming like a low-grade current. My gut, the same one that had screamed under the street lamp outside our old place. The same one that pulled me off that road at mile marker 42, kicked hard. At 8:10 sharp, I looked over at Mason, our new assistant, who was halfway through organizing the courier log. You still heading to the storage unit? Yeah, he said, flipping through labels. Taking the cab since I don't drive stick. You don't need to, I told him. Take the Ford instead. Drop the delivery first. I'll get a cab. He blinked. You sure? I nodded. Just feels like a cab day. He grabbed the Ford keys, gave a thumbs up, and left. At 10:22, Mason called my cell. He was shaking so hard I could barely understand him. Brakes. He said they failed. At the intersection on South and 9th, I missed a box truck by like 3 feet. Rolled right into a snowbank. I'm fine, but man, that car is toast. The tow guy sent pictures. Undercarriage shot, brake line sliced clean, no rust, no slow wear, just a knife cut, fresh and surgical. I told Tina, then drove straight to the garage. We parked the Ford under lock. Leia showed up before I even finished signing the incident form. She walked the bay with the garage manager while I watched from 10 feet back. He won't meet my eyes, she said, walking over. You see that? Every time he lies, I said. She held up a printout. There was a purchase order last month for emergency brake service. Got waived. By who? She flipped it around. Joseph Keene's login dated 3 days before the invoice for fleet tune-ups we'd flagged last week. Detective Reed showed up 15 minutes later. Long coat, city-issued notepad, no small talk. He checked the Ford, logged the photo evidence, and handed me a card. If this gets bigger, I can liaise with County PD, but you're going to need to keep that car preserved. You do not move it. Chain of custody matters now. He tilted his head at Mason's name on the report. Why would someone want your kid assistant dead? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, that car was supposed to be mine. He underlined it in his notebook and nodded once. Slow. Joseph came by later that afternoon with 2 coffees and that fake casual smile like nothing ever stuck to him. Crazy about that, Ford, he said. Good thing our service partner's responsive, huh? He handed me one of the cups like we were buddies again. Then he dropped the name of the same shop he'd pitched Tina at dinner 2 weeks back. Said it like he was just being helpful. I didn't drink the coffee. I went upstairs, opened the archive folder, and printed every invoice we had tied to that vendor. The name traced to a shell set up 6 months ago. No real office. Website was a one-page template with a stock photo of a bay door and a contact form that didn't return calls. The business address, a mailbox store on 3rd. Tina was in the back room when I handed her the file. She didn't flip through it, just looked at the cover page, then went still. Owner on the state filings is Kara Mercer, I said. Tiffany's cousin. Tina's jaw didn't move. She just exhaled slow. Whose data on the website is privacy shielded, I added. But the IP traces to a laptop that logged in from Northlight's guest Wi-Fi 4 weeks ago during one of Joseph's strategy sessions. She didn't raise her voice, didn't panic, just said, "Put this in a folder. Don't send it anywhere yet." "Why?" I asked. "Because timing matters," she said. "And if we're going to set fire to the whole thing, we need it to burn through without smoke." That night, Gordon came home looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Hair messy, pale under his expensive coat. He dropped into the dining chair and said, "Doctor wants me on targeted antibodies. 9,600 a week. Might need 12 rounds." Tina looked up from her tablet. "Did you talk to your insurer?" He nodded like a bobblehead. "There's a hiccup. Coverage gap. Mix up with the paperwork. They're fixing it." Then he leaned forward. "I just need a bridge. 2 weeks. You float me the first 2 and I'll cover the rest." She didn't answer right away. Just tapped her pen once against her water glass. "Bridge loans don't exist between partners," she said. His eyes went wet. "Tina, come on. You know what I'm dealing with. I'm asking for documentation, not a fight. I don't have it yet." "Then you're not getting the money yet." He stood up like he was going to throw something, then stopped. Left the room without another word. I watched the whole thing without saying a word. I still wanted to protect her. Even after all this, even when I knew she didn't need it, even when the lines were this clear, which is a dumb thing to say about a woman like Tina, she didn't need a shield. But something in me wanted to keep her from having to do this alone. So instead of opening my mouth, I made soup, chopped carrots and garlic while Gordon sulked in the spare room, and Tina answered emails like nothing happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain kept running the numbers, the timelines, the angles of the cut line on the Ford. I saw Mason's face on the phone when he called, pale, shaking. Could have been his funeral. Could have been mine. I dreamed of steel, snow, and a gloved hand reaching for a frozen door handle. I woke up in a sweat. I got up, pulled a notebook from the shelf, and wrote down everything I could remember from the dream: the exact position of the van, the sound the brakes didn't make, the shape of the ditch behind the mailbox store. Grandma always said, "Write it down. It matters." I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but I knew the gut didn't lie. Tina's phone rang at 6:31. I was already awake, pouring hot water into a cracked mug when I heard her say, "Mom," and then nothing for a long stretch. Just breathing. She came out of the hallway barefoot, phone pressed to her cheek, face white. "Evelyn collapsed," she said. "In the shop, gripped a shelf. Clerk called 911. EMTs took her in. She's at County General." I grabbed the car keys without asking. The Volvo was blocked in. We rented a 4-door from the corner spot, a heater barely working, and back windows that didn't roll down. Highway alerts said no commercial trucks past exit 4 due to wind. We drove anyway, 3 hours, cold seeping through the seams. I held the GPS while Tina gripped the wheel and asked me to read the texts as they came. One from a nurse. "Stable for now. Mild arrhythmia. She's asking for you." The roads blurred gray-blue trees stiff with frost. We didn't speak more than a handful of words the whole ride. At the hospital, the nurse took us back for a 10-minute visit. Evelyn looked small in the bed, smaller than I remembered. Her hair was messy, and her hands trembled when she squeezed Tina's. But she smiled when she saw us. That same soft smile she gave me over tea the week before. "It's nothing," she said. "Just stress and rhythm. Words that float and mean nothing until someone makes them mean something." She asked if I'd had breakfast. I said, "Not yet." After 10 minutes, they wheeled her off for tests. Tina and I let ourselves into Evelyn's apartment with the emergency key. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, a wall clock that ticked too loud. On the corkboard above the table were taped Polaroids of book club nights, 6 women holding mugs, stacks of paperbacks, 1 candle in a jelly jar. She stood in the middle of the room staring at those pictures. "I hate this," she said. "I hate not being able to fix it." "You're here," I said. That's the fix she wanted. We found eggs in the fridge, made them in a dented pan with 1 wobbly handle. She cracked. I stirred. No talking about Gordon, no emails, just eggs and plates and 2 chipped glasses of tap water. After we ate, She washed the pan and I dried it. The silence was comfortable, like the quiet between old friends. Later, we curled up on the second-hand couch under a thin knit blanket that smelled like lavender and dust. She leaned into me, shoulder warm, face close. We stayed quiet. I'm not a poet, so I won't dress it up. She kissed me slow, careful, honest. I kissed her back. My fingers didn't shake for the first time in weeks. I pulled back just long enough to ask, "Are you sure?" She nodded once. Not soft, firm. We drew the shades. I'll leave it at that. Sometime 4, I woke up to the smell of rain through the cracked window. Tina slept curled toward me, steady, arms tucked tight. I made coffee in Evelyn's old drip pot. It tasted like cardboard and pennies, but I drank it anyway. Sitting in the kitchen staring at nothing. I could see a life here. Small pieces, quiet mornings, grocery lists on fridge magnets. It didn't scare me. Her phone lit up on the counter. A message from Gordon. He'd sent a selfie from a hospital hallway, one of those polished lobbies with brushed metal chairs and sterile lighting. He wore a bracelet and a brave face. The caption said, "Fainted at an event, bad charts, waiting on full panel." It was all performance. The knot in my chest returned. Not fear, something tighter, responsibility, history, lines. When she walked into the kitchen, wrapped in her coat, cheeks still flushed, I handed her the phone. She read it and took a long beat before speaking. I said, "I can't be the other guy in someone's story." "I know," she said. "No triangles, no back rooms, no second lives. You and me, we don't carry half-light. We don't survive it." Her eyes were tired, but she didn't fight me. She just nodded once. Clean. I kissed her forehead, picked up my backpack, didn't make a speech. The drive back to the city was long and silent. I didn't turn on the radio, just counted mile markers and watched the clouds shift like bruises. By the time I reached my place, the sun had dipped behind the buildings and the wind was picking up again. The one bedroom was small but dry. My tenants had moved out finally. The heat clicked on without sputtering. I tossed my bag inside and opened the fridge. Half a carton of milk, a frozen pizza, and 3 leftover ginger ales from some old night I didn't remember. I went heads down, kept working, kept chasing paper trails and calling vendors and building the slate line by line. We had new contracts to vet and distribution deals to clean up. I kept the reports organized, the notes sharp. Tina didn't text. I didn't call. At night, I sat at the edge of my bed and listened to the fridge hum. Wrote notes in a yellow pad and drank bad coffee from the same chipped mug. The silence wasn't heavy, but it pressed in just enough to remind me where I wasn't. And when I missed her, which was most nights, it came in strange places, like the empty hook where she used to hang her coat during war room meetings, or the smell of rosemary when I passed the produce aisle. I missed her in the kitchen, in the emails I almost forwarded, in the jokes I didn't send because no one else would get them. I missed her like a bruise. Quiet but deep. But clean is clean. And sometimes clean has to be enough. Work kept my hands from shaking. I spent the next week building out the editorial calendar line by line. Reconfirmed deliverables with writers, double-checked vendor contracts, pulled old invoices into one shared tracker, and highlighted anything with round numbers or recycled language. I brought in a data stringer. Nora knew a guy who used to pull shell trails for a watchdog blog. He worked quiet and fast. Every time something smelled off, he followed it like a bloodhound. I didn't hear much from Tina, just task notes and timestamps. But the work flowed like it was oxygen. Then at 12:14 a.m., my phone lit up. Text from her. 3 words. Got something. Now I called her. She picked up on the second ring, breath short like she'd just run upstairs. "I was combing through Joseph's trash folder," she said. "Auto recovery caught a draft before he wiped it. It's a payout routing doc. Consulting fees flagged to a family LLC. Whose family? Kara Mercer. Tiffany's cousin." She sent the file over. Subject line. Fourth quarter engagement structure. Attachments. Spreadsheet. Line item scope vague milestones. LLC address was a mailbox suite in Syracuse. Bank routing matched the deposit we'd flagged last quarter. Leia came in early the next day. I told her what we found. She didn't blink, just said, "Give me 20 minutes." She came back with 3 more. Same pattern. End of quarter bumps, nonsense scopes, no tangible deliverables, just oversight and audit fees with broad phrases like strategic alignment and vendor continuity. We didn't talk theory anymore. It was fact now. Tina didn't wait for consensus. She built a fake vendor shell. 1-page site, dummy email, invoice for $1,280. Legit looking, but just off enough to smell funny. We sent the test invoice through the usual system. Joseph moved it within the hour. He CC'd Tiffany from her personal Gmail. That was the tell. We brought in Detective Reed that afternoon. Evelyn insisted, said there were lines you didn't cross, and this one had been crossed 3 times over. Reed told Tina to keep acting normal. Don't tip anyone. Don't fire anyone yet. Just keep collecting. We mirrored the Gmail thread, exported the CC logs, printed everything with a timestamp. Leia notarized the copies. Company counsel verified chain of custody. Took 4 hours, and every second of it felt like defusing a bomb. Gordon showed up that night with a manila folder and a speech about second chances. Inside was a printed email chain from a clinic in New Jersey, plus a medical form half-filled. Letter had said Atlantic Specialty Care, but I recognized the logo from a last-year press kit. Tina didn't even open it. She called the clinic, asked for verification. The receptionist checked the date of birth and the name. No record, she said. Wrong branding, wrong format, and the number Gordon gave for the per round cost had changed again. First it was $14,800, then $9,600. Now it was just a lot. His math didn't hold water. Nothing did. She told him to pack a bag. He threw a fit. Knocked a small vase off the windowsill. One Evelyn had picked out from a roadside flea market. The kind of cheap thing that means something when it's been around long enough. You're cold, he said. Tina stood there quiet. No, I'm done. He left with a half-zipped duffel and no eye contact. Joseph showed up 2 days later, said he was just here for a ride. Like that explained anything. He walked in and found Leia, Tina, and one of the lawyers sitting at the dining table with hard copies of the vendor logs. I was at the counter reading timestamps off the mirrored inboxes. He stopped in the doorway, face blank, like a computer that just crashed. Tina didn't give him time to spin. We caught the invoice, the fake vendor, the Gmail CC. He tried to shift it fast. That was Tiffany. I didn't. She told me it was pre-cleared. I didn't know it wasn't. Tina slid the Slack log across the table. You did. His face cracked, eyes wide, mouth twitching like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find a grip. Then he cried. It wasn't an act. He broke in half right there, slid into the chair and covered his face with both hands. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't know how deep it had gotten. That Tiffany made him believe it was survival. That it was just smoothing edges. He gave up everything. The shared drives, the Dropbox folder he thought we didn't know about, backup receipts from his burner phone, even printouts of Slack DMs Tiffany had sent bragging about how she'd keep my boy Caleb where he belongs and how bad breaks are easier than bad PR. That one hit me in the ribs. I didn't react. Just kept my eyes on the logs. Tina stood up and walked to the hallway. She stood in silence for 2 minutes. Then she called her father. She told him flat, I have documented fraud, unauthorized vendor pipelines, and attempted harm. His sigh dragged through the speaker. If there's a way to slow roll this, we should. Appearances matter. The name matters. You're not just a person. You're a legacy. She didn't answer. He went on. If we take our time and manage this quietly, she cut him off. I'm recording this call. Silence for legal record, she added. One-party consent. I've saved the file in 3 places. Goodbye, Dad. She hung up. Then she looked at me. I nodded. Let's remove it completely. The Northlight Press all hands was set for a Tuesday. 10 a.m. sharp, fluorescent humming, interim HR on the left, legal on the right. Tina at the front, blazer pressed, sleeves rolled, calm voice, eyes clear. She opened with a simple line. You deserve the full story. Then she laid it all out. Timeline, transactions, names, no euphemisms, no shielded terms. She didn't say errors or lapses in judgment. She called it what it was, fraud, collusion, endangerment. Leia took over for the vendor flows. She showed the paper trail like she'd rehearsed it in her sleep. 4 LLCs, dozens of invoices, a dozen pass-through accounts. She ended with a mirrored Slack message from Joseph, admitting he'd smoothed the process for a friend with family ties. People in the room stopped blinking. Detective Reed stood in the back, arms folded, next to a county officer in plain clothes. They didn't move. Not until Tiffany was halfway through her rebuttal. She called the sting invoice entrapment, said it was innovation under pressure, and threw in that I was a scorned junior with delusions of legacy. That one almost made me laugh. I didn't. I just stepped forward, clicked the projector remote, and pulled up 4 vendor filings with her signature on every last one. Silence followed. Not long, but long enough to hear the breath leave her body. Then the cuffs came out. Joseph didn't look at me when he signed the cooperation agreement. He didn't apologize either, and I didn't expect him to. That's on him. By sundown, Gordon had posted a Notes app screenshot with the usual self-preservation script, vague mentions of mental health, pressure, and being led astray. Not one word about Tina, not one about the company. 2 clients dropped him that night. At 3:03 in the morning, he texted me. We were both victims of the same system. You more than anyone should understand that. I didn't reply. Nothing to say to a man who saw every wound as a stage light. Tina's father booked a press breakfast at a midtown club and sat behind a polished podium talking about a regrettable chapter in a proud company's history. He wore the usual flag pin, said all the right sentences, paused where he was supposed to. What stuck with people was the fact that Tina didn't stand behind him. Authors notice where you stand. Evelyn gave a speech 3 days later at a community center reading event. No script, no podium, just a small mic and a metal stand and her calm bookstore voice. We pay full price for truth, she said. No discounts for bloodlines. 10 minutes later, our team inbox lit up. 5 independent outlets wanted access to the Beacon slate. We built a fund for Mason, the kid who almost died in my place. We set the target at 25,000. It cleared 31,69 days. Anonymous donation at the top was a perfect match. Tina, I checked in on Barbara every other weekend. Eddie said she'd fallen twice in 3 weeks, even with the salt. I found a rehab facility 27 miles out, modest, clean, safe, and drove her there myself one Sunday morning. She wore 2 coats and called me an unclaimed blessing in front of the intake nurse. Just before I left, she squeezed my good hand and said, "Your grandma would be proud. She raised you square." I didn't say anything, just nodded. Hank Wells left a voicemail 2 nights later. "Saw you on that live panel," he said. "Don't go Hollywood on me, you hear? You start wearing scarves indoors. I'm taking your name off the fishing plaque." I laughed harder than I had in weeks. By the end of the month, the Beacon slate wasn't an idea anymore. It was real. Whiteboards, active contracts, phone lines that rang, the smell of cheap coffee, and dry erase markers. We took turns restocking paper. We walked over to pick up our own lunches. Nothing glossy, nothing inflated, just honest work. The kind that washes you clean if you let it. I was folding laundry. Last load, shirt still warm when she knocked. No driver, no assistant, no carefully worded subject line. Just Tina standing in the doorway of my 1-bedroom in that black coat she wore when it mattered. Hair pulled back, no makeup, no armor. Same look she gave me in the lobby that first week. The one that said, "I've already made up my mind." I opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in slow, looked around the place like she was seeing it for the first time. Books stacked 2 deep on the shelves, the payos plant still trailing across the window ledge, scar on the countertop from when I left a hot pan too close to the edge. She touched the back of a dining chair and said, "It looks like you." And I knew she meant it the way nobody had ever meant it before. She turned to face me. "I don't want a life built for other people. I don't want deals that rot my hands. I don't want the kind of love you hide because the timing is messy." I didn't say anything yet. She wasn't done. "I want something clean. Us on paper in daylight." It hit me low. Not in a painful way, just deep like breath you forgot you were holding. I thought about my grandma sitting on the back steps in winter, cigarette in one hand, thermos of weak coffee in the other. She used to say, "You can call it gut if it helps, but some of us get given extra eyes. Use them for good." I spent years pretending I didn't have them or worse, ignoring what they saw. So, I told Tina the truth. "I can't promise I'll always see what's coming, but if I do, I'll tell you, even if it costs me something." She smiled, soft and sure. "Deal," she said. We sat down at the table, no ceremony, talked like people who had work to do and didn't want to screw it up. We made lists, not dreams, terms. The kind of contracts we'd sign and the kind we wouldn't. How we'd write payment clauses on the 1st and 15th. No floats, no delay buffers, formal anti-kickback language in every single vendor agreement. Transparency in author splits, no shortcuts, no favors, no soft promises at conferences that turned into bad math 6 months later. We kept it real. I told her I'd finalized my exit from Northlight. All the paperwork was signed, boxed, and copied. She told me she'd sent her father the audio file. He'd gone quiet. No follow-up, no media spin. She'd resigned her board seat. Formally dissolved the engagement with Gordon in writing. No loopholes. The townhouse was hers now. Clean. We didn't toast. No playlist. No dancing in the kitchen. We ordered dumplings from a place on 9th Street and ate them on the floor with our backs against the couch. She took my hand halfway through a sesame ball and I could feel the blood moving under my skin where the frost had once burned it stiff. Not a word was said about the past. Just two people in a quiet room on a bare floor making steady choices. I used to think a good ending needed spectacle, confetti, applause, some kind of headline. Turns out a good ending can look like a quiet Tuesday. Like steam off takeout, like someone reaching for your hand without asking. It's enough. And if that same heat rises in my chest again, the one I've spent most of my life pushing down, I won't run from it. I won't give it a fake name. I'll call it what it is, and I'll follow it.